What's going on, guys, and welcome back to #AskGSM, episode 568 here today for Wednesday, October 16, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. A quick reminder, you could buy your all-new WrestleRant shirt today on ProWrestlingTees.com/WrestleRant. We got one shirt available, hoping to have more available soon, including a Halloween design. So get on it now. Check out the store. I should have the link in the description box down below. Also available, like I said, at ProWrestlingTees.com/WrestleRant. So let's get into it here. Let's not waste any more time. Micah does it from YouTube. Their first question was, if Triple H had gotten fired by TKO tonight, who are 3 guys that you would put in his spot for creative? It's a good question, and it's something worth thinking about too. Not that Triple H is going to get fired, but a couple different factors. One, anything can happen. Anyone could drop dead tomorrow. I mean, Triple H himself almost dropped dead from that heart attack a couple years ago. Obviously, at that point, he wasn't running WWE creative as a whole, but you also have to think, like, when he left NXT, that was kind of like when the overhaul happened with the whole NXT 2.0 bullshit. But Shawn Michaels kind of slid in that spot at some point and became the head of creative in NXT. So then you have to think, okay, so something like that were to happen today, or if Triple H were named in the Janelle Grant lawsuit as far as having known about it but not doing anything about it, and there's been rumors about that anyway, but what if that were to materialize? This is a realistic thing to consider, and hopefully that does not happen, because again, he has been very good for WWE creative in the last couple of years, and it would be a bummer if he had to step down or if he got sick again or whatever. But to answer your question, the 3 names that come to mind are Shawn Michaels, and I know he's already running NXT, but you just promote him from NXT to the main roster. You find someone else to run NXT. I think the main roster would be a bigger priority, and he has proven in NXT that he is capable of some solid creative stuff. So I would promote Shawn Michaels from NXT to the main roster. William Regal, because he's there anyway. He's basically been Triple H's right-hand man since coming back to the company about a year or 2 ago. So William Regal. The third person is a bit more of a question mark for me. It would not be Bruce Pritchard. Fuck no. It would probably not be anyone that has been on creative before. Like whether it be like an Eric Bischoff or fuck no, absolutely fuck no to Vince Russo, obviously. But it wouldn't be like a Russo or a Bischoff or someone like that. Probably Paul Heyman. Honestly, I totally forgot about Heyman for a second because I'm thinking about him from a performer lens, but he already does some creative stuff anyway as far as the bloodline goes. I don't know how much involvement he has on the rest of the show, but he's another guy when I talked to him before Mania and I interviewed him about his Hall of Fame induction. He was very complimentary of Triple H as far as his creative overhaul of the product and how closely he's worked with him and how much he's personally been affected by Triple H being back in charge and all this other sort of stuff. So Heyman, Regal, and Shawn Michaels would be my 3 personally. Your second question from Micah. I heard your question about Brock last week, and it got me thinking to ask, what are the top 5 Brock Lesnar matches from 2012 to 2023? I think the top 5 Brock matches in that period, if we're not including his original run from the early 2000s, and even then I think a majority of the matches I would choose would be from that 11-year period, just because obviously he was there for a lot fucking longer. From 02 to 04, he was only there for 2 years. But in that 11-year period, I would go with the CM Punk match in no particular order. I don't want to rank them right here, right now. I will with the Bryan Danielson stuff. Someone asked me about Bryan Danielson's best matches. Those I will rank, because I actually did an article ranking his best matches in WWE and AEW about a month or 2 ago, right before All In. And I'll slightly adjust it. But anyway, that's later on. As far as the Brock matches go, the CM Punk match from SummerSlam. 2 Survivor Series matches right off the fucking bat. The AJ Styles one from 2017 and the Daniel Bryan one from 2018. I think those are among his best matches he had in that 11-year run. And neither had any stakes. It was that crap Raw versus SmackDown gimmick that they were doing at Survivor Series at the time. But I would definitely do that. Those 2, the Punk match, the Brock Roman match from Mania 31. You could include SummerSlam 2022, but I would that was a great match as well, probably one of his best as well. But I would only include one Roman match, and it would be that one. So the Roman match for Mania 31, the Joe match, the Samoa Joe match from Great Balls of Fire 2017, I would say was an honorable mention just because it was only 5 minutes. It was a great fucking sprint. Same thing with the Goldberg match from that same year at WrestleMania 33. I love that match. I was there for that match, but it was just too short. So I don't know if I would say those are among his best. Nothing really from 2018. The matches he had with Roman and Braun that year were fucking garbage. 2019, he faced Balor in 2019, didn't he? He faced Rey Mysterio in 2019. He faced Balor in 2019. The Rollins matches were good. The SummerSlam match he had with Rollins was great. I don't know if I would put that in my top 5, though. He had a bunch of matches with Roman. The Cody match was great. The SummerSlam one in particular, I don't know if I would put that on there. Probably, you know what, now thinking about it, the Drew match and no crowd. Man, there's a couple other I could choose, like the Bobby Lashley matches. I would go with the Cena match from Extreme Rules 2012. The first match that he came back for was a fucking spectacle. I'm not sure how that didn't immediately come to mind, just because I guess it was so long ago. But that match, the Punk match from SummerSlam 2013, the Roman Reigns match from WrestleMania 31 in 2015, and then the back-to-back Survivor Series matches with AJ and Bryan, respectively, in 2017 and 2018. That would be my top 5 Brock Lesnar matches from that WWE run. Mike's third question, have you ever done a live #AskGSM, and would you consider doing one here on the channel in the near future? Great question, and timely too. So yes, I have. I have gone live for hashtag multiple times. It's really for the milestone episodes. We went live not for episode 100. Episode 100 I did a couple years into doing it, which would have been in 2015. Funny thing about that one, I didn't go live for it. I was in college at the time. My laptop shit the bed literally right after that. My charger broke, and I couldn't just get a new charger because the port was fucking shot. So I had no laptop for a couple weeks there, and I had to use like the school computers, and like I was there until like fucking 1 o'clock in the morning working on shit, watching Raw, pay-per-views. Just fucking ridiculous, but I made it work. So I think we did episode 100, and then... or we were about to do it, and then I had to go on a hiatus. That was like one of the only times I have not done this show. Aside from when I first started, we did it in the summer of 2013, and then I took a break when I went to school. I started college, so I took a break from doing it for a while. And then ever since early 2014, like for the last decade, I've been doing it pretty much every week. The only time I was not doing it every week was at that point, in 2015, where I had to take like 2 or 3 weeks off due to my laptop. So 100 we didn't, 200 we did. That was in September of 2017. The first ever, I think, live video I've ever done here on the channel was that one. If you go to my channel on your computer, I don't know if you could see it on your phone, but you could see all the live streams we've done, and half of them are hashtags. So we did 200 live in 2017, 300 live in, I think, August, or I think it might have been August 2017. Or 2019, rather. And then 400 I went live for in 2021. We did that. I think that was July of 2021. And then 500 we did live. The audio quality was garbage. My mic was not working when I recorded with Alexis. That would have been last June. So 500 we went live for. I also went live, I think, for this exact 7-year anniversary show. I did a random episode in July of 2020. That was another live episode I had done. And we actually used to do this over camera, too. I used to do this as a on-camera show. Doing it over audio recording is, 1, makes it more flexible for me. And 2, I just prefer the audio recording stuff, but a couple different things here. 1, I might bring back the on-camera recording thing. Maybe not. I'm not exactly sure yet. But at the very least, as far as the live thing goes, like I said, I've done it for the milestone episodes. But what I've been considering lately is doing more live streams here on the channel. Now, I don't know what form that would take exactly. I don't know whether I would do my SmackDown reviews live over the weekend. Not right after the show, but like on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. I was considering that. Obviously not hashtag the 2K24 gameplay stuff. I can't make that live with the technology I have and don't have. But I was considering making hashtag AskGSM a live show. I don't know if it would be at the same time every week. My recording schedule is kind of all over the place depending on what I got going on and places I got to be and stuff like that and work stuff I got to do. But I was considering at some point, maybe soon, doing hashtag live every Wednesday. So, and obviously I couldn't stop it to I fucked up, and that's usually what happens a lot with these recordings, and sometimes it takes me longer to process the video. My new computer allows me to process these videos a lot quicker. Thank fucking God. My last laptop was awful. But as far as like stopping and pausing, I used to do that a lot. I still do it a lot if I fuck up and shit. But, going live, we're live, pal, It is what it is. So I am considering doing that. Long answer to your short question. I apologize. But all of that to say, I am considering it. If it is something you guys want to see, and not only send in your questions in advance, which you guys do anyway, obviously. I collect your questions on Tuesday nights. I was considering moving the day, but I think we've been on Wednesdays for so long. I think Wednesdays work perfect for the show. I've been on Wednesdays now for 8 years, and why change it? We were on Mondays before that. For the first 3 years of doing this show, we were on Mondays. But then I moved it to Wednesdays. After SmackDown moved to Tuesdays, I thought it just made more sense, and we've been on Wednesdays ever since. But yeah, so I am considering, going live every week, and not only answer your questions that you guys send in, but also answer questions live on the show. If you're able to watch live, and you can send in a question in the chat, or just listen in live, and, whatever. So it is something I'm considering. Keep an eye out for it. And not even just as a special occasion thing. I might start doing it live every week. So we'll see. I don't know. That might be something coming in the not-too-distant future. Jordan B. from YouTube, his question was, which WWE pay-per-view / PLE that didn't have much interest or hype that you ended up enjoying? For me, it was WWE Payback 2023, Hell in the Cell 2022, WrestleMania 31, and No Way Out 2012. All solid choices. My first few pay-per-views that came to mind, honestly, from this year alone, I had no expectations for Backlash, aside from the fact that it was, in Paris, or Lyon, rather. It was in France. It looked to be another subpar, not subpar, because a lot of their B shows in the last year or two alone have been really, really good. But, I kind of figured it would be another forgettable B show with really not a whole lot happening. That ended up being one of the best B shows that WWE has ever done. In Backlash this year specifically. I fucking love that show. So that was the first answer that came to mind, specifically for the Cody AJ main event. But the overall show was a blast. So Backlash 2024 comes to mind. Maybe even Backlash 2023, the one that was in Puerto Rico. That ended up being a really, really fun show. I'm not sure if there was a lot of hype or buzz for that one because Mania 39 was so great that I'm not sure people thought, oh yeah, Backlash would come anywhere close. And then it did. If you go back a lot further than that, then I'm thinking I don't know if this was a show that had hype. I honestly don't really remember that well. But TLC 2011 to me is one of the more underrated shows. I fucking love that show. And I feel like it was a real, agent of change as far as introducing the new wave of champions, albeit briefly. Punk was still on top as WWE champion at that point, but it was on that show that Daniel Bryan won the World Heavyweight title. And Zack Ryder won the United States Championship. And it was during a period in WWE too where there really wasn't a whole lot to get excited about, but that show ended up being one that I thoroughly enjoyed. So, I've answered questions before about underrated pay-per-views and stuff like that. So not Extreme Rules, I think it was Extreme Rules too, Extreme Rules and Backlash. 2009, I actually thought were really good shows. They were more underrated shows. Again, I don't know the hype level, I was just starting out as a wrestling fan at that point, so I don't really remember all that well. But I thought those shows were good. 2010, nothing really comes to mind. I mentioned 2011. 2013 had some pretty sneaky good pay-per-views. Extreme Rules that year was pretty good. You mentioned Payback 2023. In 2013, Payback 2013 was a fucking great show, and Money in the Bank was a great show too. Again, I don't remember the hype level, but that string of shows from Extreme Rules to SummerSlam was terrific. 2015, I don't remember all that well. I remember Battleground. Battleground was a notoriously terrible show for a while. 2016, though, was a great fucking show. That was right before the brand split stuff went into effect. It was right after the draft and the new era of SmackDown and Raw and Backlash that year. The first SmackDown exclusive show in a long time. Was really, really good. Again, I don't remember the hype level for it, but that ended up being one of my favorite pay-per-views. TLC that same year as well. As far as Manias go, Mania 31, I would agree on that one. The hype level wasn't this is going to be the greatest Mania of all time. It was kind of the same thing for WrestleMania 30, where the build was not great. Same thing with Mania 38 in Texas, where the product was kind of fucking awful going into Mania 38 in 2022. And the product wasn't great coming out of it. It was so weird. It was like an isolated thing where it was a great show. It was a great, like, the product going in was eh. The product coming out was eh. But that Mania was awesome. And I would say the same thing about 31 and 30. So yeah, I would agree with your choices, and those are some of my choices as well. Let's see. Next couple of questions come from Chris W. from YouTube. His first question was, he says, "Hello, Graham. Hope everything is going great so far this week and you're doing well. I've actually decided to take a break from pro wrestling after having to deal with the idiots in the IWC following last Tuesday's shows. I'm sick of the tribalism and the goalpost moving, so I think time away from watching the sport will clear my brain and emotions from the parasites that infect it. Anyway, I watched last week's episode of Raw, and I felt it was rushed, dull, and lacked urgency. I didn't watch last night, that being on Monday, but I heard the show was again dull and lacking excitement, it being a tape show and all. So far, from what I've seen and heard, it seems like WWE isn't putting too much effort in trying to adapt back to the 2-hour format. I don't know if it's trying to get back into the format, it's just trying to get back into the format, or maybe it's far harder to do now since it's been over a decade, but I haven't been that impressed. Do you think WWE is struggling to going back to the old 2-hour format? And if so, what do you think they can do to change it up and make it feel more natural? It's not like WWE or Triple H even has inexperience booking a 2-hour show, because Raw and SmackDown really are the same brand. I mean, it's not like they have to do more on Raw than they do on SmackDown. SmackDown has always been a 2-hour show, and Triple H has been booking SmackDown as a 2-hour show through its good times and bad for a few years now. So yeah, Raw is a larger roster, and I think that's the biggest difference, is trying to get everyone on the show. They do have to find their footing again with the concept. It's a bummer, too, because, one, I liked last week's show. You said you didn't like it. I liked last week's show. This week's show, I didn't like as much. I thought it was okay. I thought it was decent, but it was a tape show, had no fucking energy. If you didn't watch it, you didn't really miss much. I thought it was a fine show. By the time they kind of find their footing again with the 2-hour format for Raw, it might be time to go back to 3 hours on Netflix. So it might take a little while to kind of find a rhythm that works and the formula that works, because they did for 3 hours. I mean, the 3 hours weren't great and the 3 hours were fucking long, but they did find a formula that largely worked with those episodes of Raw being 3 hours and finding a way to make the most of those 3 hours and whatnot. I thought last week's 2-hour show, it was good, but it had its issues as far as like, all right, let's get all the women on the show in a fucking 10-woman tag. Like, anyone gives a shit. You know what I mean? Like, we can't go back to the days of that. That is a step backward for the women specifically. We had a lot of video packages this week. I would kind of take this week's show and throw it away, because it was a tape show. It wasn't live. The formatting was different because a lot of those same people that would have been on the show last week would have been on again if they booked them in multiple matches. You know what I mean? So it was a little bit different. Next week will be another test, and hopefully it's better than it was even last week and this week. So we'll see. I like the shows for what they are. They could be better, the 2-hour format. Obviously, we've had some better 3-hour Raws than we had 2-hour Raws recently, but the 2 hours are just so much more fucking bearable. I mean, again, it's only been 2 weeks, but I will take the 2-hour format. It has not been a bad show. And there were Raws that were 3 hours that were not great either. I don't even care. I understand what you're saying, but I will still take the 2-hour Raws. They are just so much easier to get through. I started the show this past week. I did not watch this week's live. I started it at 8:40. On the East Coast, obviously, it starts at 8. I started it 40 minutes in. And by the time we got to the end of the show, I was live. But like within the last 5 or 10 minutes, because I skipped through all the bullshit, all the commercials, all the video packages, not even the vignettes. Like I like the entrances I'll skip, because who gives a fuck for the most part. But all that shit I skip, and I still managed to make it live right before the show ended, right before 10 o'clock. I just love the 2-hour format. So they do have a lot of stuff to tweak, and by the time they will find a rhythm with it, they're going to be back to 3 hours on Netflix. But yeah, I'm going to enjoy the 2 hours while it lasts. Let's put it that way. For the Facebook questions, Noel from Facebook said, if you could rebook any one WrestleMania match card, what would it be? Ooh, it's a good question. Probably 25 25? I've always, I don't know, for a long time, I rebooked Mania 25. Or Mania, you know what, actually, I take that back. Mania 29. Mania 29, I think, because, I've said before, 32, even 27. 27, just, the execution sucked. But, 27, 32, 25, all of those I would have rebooked. But, the people that I would have used on those cards were not available. I think Batista could have been ready for 25, but they brought him back the night after on Raw. I don't know how ready he was by Mania. I don't know if he would have been ready a month out. I don't know. But him and Orton on that show would have made sense. Because he was the one that took him out. But then he came back for Orton the night after WrestleMania instead. But I think with what was the Mania I mentioned? Mania 29. Mania 29, it wasn't a matter of who was hurt. I think everyone was pretty much healthy at that point. It was more of a case of what the card actually was. I would not have done Cena and Rock one-on-one again. I know that was always the plan. I get it. No one wanted to fucking see it, and the match sucked anyway. I would have done... You know what? Honestly, I take that back. I probably would have done Cena and Rock, but I would have turned Cena heel for the rematch and had Cena won, but I would not have done it for the championship. I mean, you could still do Punk and Taker, but Punk and Taker is a streak versus championship match, with Punk still the WWE champion. That's the biggest thing to me. Brock and Triple H, they were always going to do, because Triple H lost to Brock at SummerSlam the year prior, and they wanted to revisit it. Whatever. I mean, I didn't really want to see that, but okay. They did that. What else was even on that show? I think Jericho and Ziggler I would have done for the World Heavyweight Championship. We got Ziggler and Fandango, or Jericho and Fandango, anyone gave a fuck. And Ziggler was in a tag team title match. I would have done Ryback and Big Show, as ridiculous as that sounds. They ended up doing Ryback and Mark Henry, but Big Show was the World Heavyweight Champion going into 2013, and then he lost it out of nowhere to Del Rio. They tried to get Del Rio as a babyface, get him over as a babyface. It didn't really work. I don't know what you would have done to them on that show, and I don't really care. I think Ryback, who was over, and they could have redeemed him at that point, could have faced and beaten Big Show for the World Heavyweight Championship. I don't know how great the match would have been, but you could have teased him hitting the shell shock on Big Show. It could have been a nice hoss fight. They did have matches in the years that followed, and they weren't bad. So I feel like that could have worked. They did the Shield versus Orton, Sheamus, and Big Show. Take Big Show out of that shit. Maybe you turn Orton heel and have him face Sheamus. Maybe that would have worked. Daniel Bryan, Team Hell No. I don't know. I think I would have said Rey Mysterio and Sin Cara, but I think one of them, if not both of them, were hurt. Cesaro wasn't even on that show. He was the United States champion. I don't think that belt was even defended on that pay-per-view. I don't think the Intercontinental title... Was the Intercontinental title defended at Mania? Oh, it was. It was Wade Barrett and Miz. I don't know. I would have rebooked that show. I think that show had the potential to be better, and it just wasn't. I would have done AJ and Caitlyn, too. Caitlyn had just won the Divas Championship in January. AJ was on the show, but she didn't wrestle. They ended up doing that match months later. I would have done it at Mania and had AJ beat Caitlyn for the belt on that show, not wait until fucking, June. And they had a pretty good match on that Payback show in Chicago that June, but I would have done it then. So, yeah, I probably would rebook Mania 29, to be honest with you. Your second question: what would you say are Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson's top 5 matches from WWE and AEW of all time? So like I said earlier, I made an article about this right before All In, before his possible retirement, and he did not retire on that show. He retired it All Out, or actually on Wrestle Dream this past weekend. So here's my list. I put Cena in Bryan at 5 from SummerSlam 2013. I would bump that to 6 in favor of the Swerve match at All In. I thought the Swerve match at All In was one of his best AEW matches. So I would go with that one. 4, Adam Page from the January 5th, 2022 edition of Dynamite for the AEW World Championship. Fantastic match. 3, the Orton Batista Triple Threat, of course, from Mania 30, WrestleMania. Got to put that up there. 2, MJF, the Iron Man match from Revolution in 2013 for the AEW World Championship. Probably the best Iron Man match I've seen personally. And then number 1, the Will Ospreay match from Dynasty earlier this year. So those are my top 5, top 6 Cena or Bryan Danielson matches in WWE and AEW. I haven't seen any of his Ring of Honor matches for the most part, so I can't really say those. I also included the Omega match from Grand Slam, the Punk match from Over the Limit 2012, him and Triple H from Mania 30, him and Ricky Starks from All Out, the strap match last year, and the AJ Styles match from TLC 2018 for the WWE Championship. There's plenty of others, but those were the main ones. Those were his best matches, in my opinion, in both companies. Christopher L. from YouTube, his first question, or from Facebook rather, his first question was, did you watch the WrestleDream media scrum? I heard it was embarrassing, and it was an embarrassing night for wrestling news journalists who did not want to ask any relevant or real questions, or they asked questions, but they were the standard generic questions they always ask. I won't spend too much time on this. I do have a lot of thoughts on it. I'm actually in the minority where, obviously the journalist, there is some blame there, but I think, I did not watch the media scrum. To answer your question, I did not watch it. I really don't care. I watched the WWE ones. Those tend to be more newsworthy, and even then, a lot of the questions are just not great. And again, I go to a lot of these, so I can blame myself. Some of my questions aren't great either. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I know how to do it better. That's not true. And most of these people I hear ask questions. I'm like, who even the fuck is this person? You don't need to know who they are, but it's like sometimes they let in the most random fucking people. Like, who is this person? How did they get credentials to ask a question? Yet I know people that are in there that should be asking a question that did not. But anyway, I didn't watch the WrestleDream one. The AEW ones used to be like fucking 2 hours long. I didn't watch them before the Punk thing. I started watching them after the Punk scrum 2 years ago because I thought, maybe they'll address certain shit that was interesting, and they never really did. Here's the thing with the AEW press scrum. Just the WWE press scrums do. What got people talking about the WrestleDream one was the Mariah May thing. I don't blame Mariah May. I blame the company for putting her out there. Tony Khan wasn't even there. Then don't even fucking do it. And I've seen people say, oh yeah, they were still stunned from the finish of the show, which, yeah, that's true. I don't know why that would affect them asking Mariah May a question. I had seen people kind of blame the ending of the show on why Mariah May wasn't being asked questions. I don't see it that way. What I see it as is this. There is nothing interesting to ask her. Now, one person did raise their hand and ask who's next. Fine question, but you always fucking hear that shit. You literally said it in your question. I'm not going off on you, Chris, but, people... I think what you mentioned is my biggest problem with the press conferences. I think everyone's to blame. The company, some of the people that attend these things, some of the wrestlers too. It's not always their fault. It's not really their fault usually at all, but sometimes it is. It's not defined most of the time in either company, whether these things are supposed to be in fucking character or not. And someone had brought up to me the other day, like, oh yeah, New Japan does it best, where they have some of these wrestlers go out there. I don't even know if they answer questions. They just have the wrestler go out there, not answer any questions, address their character shit, and leave. The questions are either garbage or they are nothing questions. And I guarantee you, if Mariah, which I guess is better than nothing, but I guarantee you if anyone did raise their hand to ask Mariah May a question, it would have been a nothing question. And that is not the journalist's fault. That is the company. I mean, yes, it is a journalist's job to come up with interesting questions. And that's what makes it more difficult when they don't have anything interesting going on. I blame the company for what they're doing or what they're not doing with Mariah is a factor. She just doesn't have a whole lot going on right now. She won the title. She hasn't really done anything memorable at all. The Willow match was great, though. I will say that. The Willow match was really good. She hasn't really done a whole lot since All In, about 6 weeks ago, okay? Then just don't put her out there for the press scrum, because what the fuck is she going to say? What kind of questions would she even be asked? Oh, you anticipating Tony Storm coming back? Like, who cares? Like, she's in character. I really don't care about the in-character questions or answers unless it's entertaining, and she can be entertaining with that sort of stuff. For the most part, it's really just MJF, and that's it. And maybe a few other people. Like, Bryan Danielson is the master, and unfortunately, he's gone now from full-time competition, but, like, he was the master of putting him out there and being entertaining, and he was never in character. He would answer shit honestly. Christian, who I love, going out there doing his heel shtick about, like, oh yeah, your dad's dead, being a dick to the people there, like, Jericho used to do the same thing. What fucking value do we get out of this? The whole point of a press scrum or a news conference or a press conference is to get newsworthy, like, not gotcha headlines, but, like, newsworthy shit that people can report on are going to talk about. There is nothing newsworthy about the AEW press conferences at all, which is why I don't watch them. A lot of the time, it's just Tony Khan rambling on for 20 fucking minutes about, oh, watch Rampage on Fridays, like anyone gives a shit. And then, of course, the one time he's not there, again, answer the actual, he just doesn't answer the questions. I mean, there's a whole lot of, there's a lot that they can break down with these press conferences. Yes, who they let in is a factor, but it's also who they put out there and how they answer these questions. Either they don't answer the interesting questions, they give a shitty answer, like Triple H. Triple H always, he just has a knack at this point for giving stupid answers to questions. We talked about that last week as far as the bad blood thing goes, and I don't see color. Dumb answer, in my opinion. Or they just ramble on about whatever the fuck else, like Tony Khan with some of his questions sometimes. Like, again, what value do these press conferences even have? Like, honestly, if they're not going to use them, if they're going to be in character, then don't invite real people that are going to, and like, the questions that are asked are real questions. There's no conspiracy theory, and maybe sometimes they plant questions with fucking celebrities and stuff, and I'm talking about WWE. AEW doesn't do that. AEW, what they do, and I'm sure WWE would have the same issue, AEW does it as a shoot, and they go off of people who raise their hand. In WWE, I can tell you from experience, a lot of the times, they never have a dull moment because they ask people, do you want to ask a question? Like, not in the moment, like, when someone else is answering a question, when a wrestler is answering a question, they go up to some of the people, like me and other people that are in there saying, hey, you got next, do you want to ask a question? And obviously you could say no if you don't have anything. I always say yes, I take advantage of the opportunity and try to ask something interesting. I've tried to do a better job of preparing ahead of time. But otherwise, like for Mariah May, if I was in the room, if no one else was going to ask a question, I would have felt bad for her, so I probably would have asked something. But they also don't really advertise who's going to be on these things before they come in, so you kind of have to go off the cuff. They never advertise, for the most part, who will be there. So you prepare for every single winner, loser, whatever. It's part of the job. But a lot of the questions, they're all like, no one cares about in-character shit. Oh, how do you feel about your title reign so far? Again, if we're doing an interview, like a fucking 15-minute interview, and I'm trying to kill time with basic questions, then yeah, I will ask a champion that if we're doing an interview here for the channel or whatever. But in a press scrum, if that's the best you can come up with, I mean, it's not really on the journalist. There's really just nothing to ask. And I've asked questions like that too, but it's like, what else do you even fucking ask? There's really nothing out of character, out of the ordinary about, or in light of certain circumstances, like with the Vince thing. I don't really feel comfortable asking Bayley about anything other than that, and I'm not going to ask her about that because it's not really relevant to her. And I was kind of, again, I never really say no when they say, hey, would you like to ask a question? I said, yeah, and I asked my question. I got shit on for it because it didn't have to do with Vince. And it was a basic, the generic questions that you say. They're softball questions. That's what Mariah May would have gotten, which I guess is better than nothing. But then people shit on the people that are in there saying, oh, they didn't ask any questions. Well, if they did, you would have shit on them for asking softball questions. So what the fuck is it? What are you going to ask her that's really all that interesting that she hasn't already been asked, especially about the show itself? Nothing. There's nothing to ask. So then put someone from the main event out there. Put someone like Adam Cole out there. Those are the people that should be out there. Takeshita just won the title. That makes more sense if he's going to be in character, whatever. Swerve, he's a big name. He was out there, I think. That makes sense. You want to put a female out there, I get it. And I think that may have been the only women's match on the show, so I understand that, but at the same time, it's like, what do you even ask her? So I don't know. I could do a whole other video on this because it bothered me when I saw people like, oh, who are these journalists in the room? I don't even know who was in the room. I wasn't there. But it's like, I don't really entirely blame the people that were in that room because it's like, what the fuck do you even ask this woman? And I feel bad for her. I don't really blame Mariah at all. But it's like, I get you want to have a female presence, but then give her something more interesting to do that people can talk about. Because you're not going to ask her, oh, like, do you feel like your run's been underwhelming so far? Because she's not going to answer it honestly. She's going to answer it in kayfabe. It's a fake sport. What the fuck are you going to ask? You know what I mean? It's a really difficult thing. That's why, as people have said, then don't even do them. Honestly, like, I love going to them, but you're not wrong. If they're just going to be embarrassing for everyone involved, then why the fuck even do them? They are fun train wrecks sometimes, which is why I enjoy watching them or going to them. But because I feel like every time we leave one of these things, and I'm like, why was that question asked? Why was this question not asked? And why did this wrestler or Triple H specifically respond the way that he did? It's always embarrassing one way or the other. So they got to figure it out. Both companies do. Like, what are these things supposed to be? Out of character, in character? Figure it the fuck out and let me know. His next question. What's been going on lately with Northeast Wrestling? I haven't been paying too much attention to them since their last trip to the old Mid-Hudson Civic Center. Any big changes so far? So they did, Bryan Anthony, I'm sure if you've gone to NEW, you probably are aware of Bryan Anthony, one of their biggest names for the past 15 years since I first started going to their shows. He retired earlier this year. NEW went on hiatus last year. They did one last show in like August or something that I was there for. They started doing shows at like their home base of Bethany CT. Great arena, great build. It's not really an arena. It's like a fucking bingo hall. But I think the building had to be renovated. So they stopped running shows for a while and then came back in April. They returned with a show in April. That was Bryan Anthony's last match. Very fun show. They did other shows like, in Ohio and shit. But they did a show in June of this year. They did a show in July, both of which were great shows. And then that was it. I haven't really heard much, to be honest with you. I don't know why they've gone on hiatus. I don't know why they've stopped touring and doing shows. I don't know when the last time they did a New York show was. It was probably a few years ago at this point, if not early 2023. But yeah, I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if business is down or if they just got other shit going on. They can't book people. So I don't know. Matt Taven's currently the champion, so that's another problem too, because Matt Taven signed AEW, so it's like they should have got the belt off of him a while ago, because you can't really book him for shows if he has to attend the AEW tapings and shit. So it's difficult. I did hear from one guy that works there that I was speaking to over DM about a week or two ago. And he said, yeah, he didn't really give me a reason as to why they stopped running shows, but he was like, yeah, it's a bummer that they stopped running shows, that they, not fell off again, but like just kind of went dark again, because there's really not a whole lot of go-to premier wrestling promotions in CT. There is indie stuff here, but to me, nothing better than NEW. NEW is the best there is. The best there was, the best there ever will be. And Bret Hart, I actually met him at a Northeast Wrestling show many years ago. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't really know what's going on with him. I'm friends with the promoter online and shit, and sometimes he'll, hit me up saying, oh yeah, we'll be back soon, or whatever, and I just haven't heard anything. So hopefully everything's okay, and hopefully we do see them back on the road soon, and hopefully I can catch you at a show down the road. NEW, no one does it better, the indie environment, better than them. It's a great time. I've written several articles about NEW on my own website, on Bleacher Report, about how great the atmosphere is there and why I recommend it to anyone. It's always a great time. And hopefully they're back soon, because I miss them. I miss going to the shows. They're always great. Your next question, what are some of your favorite match endings that you have ever watched in your years as a wrestling fan? Oh, I don't know. Match endings? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that could come to mind. None come to mind currently. One that comes to mind where I was like, freaked the fuck out right before the finish was the RKO out of nowhere to Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 31. That was incredible. The whole match was very fun, but the actual finish. I mean, obviously, we've been over this before, like, oh, what's your favorite RKO? What's your favorite finisher? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's my favorite RKO. That 31 RKO to Rollins at Mania was fucking phenomenal. They nailed that shit. The Javon Evans one, they didn't nail as much about a week ago in NXT, but they nailed that one at Mania 31 when it mattered most, and it was phenomenal. So, yeah, that was probably one of my favorite match endings ever. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, when Punk won the WWE title in 2011 at Money in the Bank, you can point to that one. But, I mean, is it really the finish itself that I thought was great? I mean, the match, and the fact that he won was great, was exciting and whatnot. I'm thinking of, like, finishing sequences. The Danielson-Ospreay match, I remember, earlier this year having a great finishing sequence. Rhodes and Roman, Part 2 from Mania earlier this year. That match ending was great, so any of those. I mean, kind of on the same topic, your next question was, what are some of your favorite post-match angles that you've ever seen as a pro wrestling fan? Again, I don't really have a list in my head of like, oh, this post-match angle was amazing. I really don't know. The one that comes to mind off the top of my head, though, like when Punk left the building, going back to Money in the Bank 2011, I go back to my favorite shows. So like that show in Chicago in 2011, Punk leaving with the belt was awesome. I don't know how much of an angle it was, because it was like a quick thing, but, it was cool. I mean, All Out, 2021, I always go back to that one. Because like Christian and Omega was a really good main event, but everyone was expecting the post-match aftermath. Like, what's going to happen afterward? We're more excited for that. Like, Danielson might be coming in and whatnot, and he did, but we got Adam Cole first. That whole post-match angle was fucking amazing. So, probably that one, because I was there for that one too. That was awesome. So that, I mean, there's a lot of different ones you can go off of, but that one comes to mind as far as favorite post-match angle. Again, I'm sure there's other ones, but that's the one that comes to mind. Also, as far as favorite match endings, I forgot to mention this one. You know, it's funny, I mentioned the 31 Rollins-Orton match. That same night, the main event, Rollins cashing in one of the best perfectly executed finishes I have ever seen. With Rollins cashing in Money in the Bank, pinning Roman, protecting Brock, winning the belt. It was amazing. It was just incredible. So that also comes to mind as well. So those are the Facebook questions. I have not organized the questions yet on Twitter and Facebook and shit. So again, if you hear your name one place and then hear it again later, I apologize, but I just haven't had the time to organize them yet. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check out his content. He does great work. His first question was, he says, since I was at WrestleDream, and I hope you had a good time, John, he said, I was curious how the crowd noise came across on the pay-per-view feed. We made as much noise as we could, even though they had maybe 6,500 people in a 21,000 capacity building, and they only used half of the dome. Yeah, that's not great. You know, watching the show, I thought you guys sounded really well. It sounded really good. And I know we talked over like DM, or you tweeted me the next day, John, talking about like, oh yeah, it gets tiring by the end. I mean, I can imagine. I've been to those pay-per-views. It's fucking long. It's an exhausting night. That being said, I thought the pay-per-view was strong enough that you guys were loud even for the main event. And Briscoe and Jericho, who really cares? But like some of the stuff before that, you guys were into. And the crowd also kind of came alive for that Ring of Honor World Title match too. So yeah, you guys I thought were a very good crowd for the entire show. And again, it gets tiring by the end by fucking midnight. And over there, it's 9 o'clock. I get it. It's not as bad as when they do East Coast shows and the pay-per-view ends at midnight. That is rough. But, I thought you guys held your own, and it was a lively atmosphere for most of the show, specifically early on. For like when Cole came back, that was a great reaction. The opener got a great reaction. You guys were into it. The triple threat match, the three-way match for the international title, you guys were into. So you guys were a great crowd. Obviously it peaked at that point, but that was also the best thing on the entire show in terms of the matches. So it just makes sense. Your next question. What were your thoughts on the end of WrestleDream? While many in the crowd knew Bryan would lose, I can tell you firsthand that Khan likely killed Washington State as a market. I did not like it. That doesn't mean it's bad. I'm just going off of my own opinion here. I didn't like that Moxley won the belt. I don't like the fact that it was Moxley who ended Danielson's full-time run. But again, tough shit on me because it was Bryan who requested it. Not everything has to be about elevating the next person. I said that with the Sting retirement. He elevated, obviously, Darby during the course of their run as a team. But it's not as if that last match specifically really elevated anyone. It was just perfectly done. You don't always have to put people over on the way out. He did, Danielson did, and that's fine. He got his big moment at All In. Cool. I just would have preferred to see him lose to someone who has not already been champion 3 other times. I just really don't care about Moxley's world champion again currently. Maybe they'll get me interested starting tonight. I don't know. Currently, I don't really care. The execution of it, killed the crowd. The finish of the match fell flat. And the post-match angle, they did that to put heat on the new Blackpool Combat Club, whatever the fuck they're calling themselves. Okay. That's what they're going with. We'll see how it works, because again, they tried to put heat on the Elite many years, it feels like many years ago, many months ago as the new heel lead group in the company, and it flopped, and the gimmick sucked, and it didn't really work. So I am curious to see how this holds up. If it is any better, I'm not sure. We'll see. That crowd, I'm sure, was pissed, though. Obviously, their hometown guy hero lost. That was the reaction that Tony Khan was probably going for. He did not want people leaving the show happy. Danielson did not want people leaving that show happy in the building. I get it. That was the point. But is it too much to the point where it's go away heat, like you said, where it's like people may not come back next time? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I just wasn't a fan of it personally, but I understood what they're going for. We'll see what the follow-up is. But typically with this sort of stuff, AEW doesn't follow up very well. So I am skeptical. Your third question. Non-wrestling related, but if I said, name your favorite and least favorite superhero movie, which would you choose? Or narrow it down to 3 each if it's too difficult. Side note, I'm at 252 movies for 2024 as of today, that being yesterday, with another 10 to 15 to add before the end of October. That's crazy. Oh yeah, you were definitely hitting 300, my friend. As far as favorite and least favorite superhero movie, that's an interesting question. I mean, my favorite would be Endgame. Obviously, Endgame. Avengers Endgame, that is, obviously. Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. Guardians 1, 2, 3, the whole franchise. Mostly Marvel stuff. I mean, as far as DC movies, I thought Suicide Squad, the 2021 one, was great. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I don't really know what other ones come to mind. I mean, Dark Knight, that is a superhero movie. So I would probably include that. I don't know if you would include the Joker as a superhero movie. The second one was terrible, so I would probably put that for least favorite. In Marvel, like my least favorite, the Thor ones, Ragnarok was one of my favorites, but Thor 1 and 2 I didn't really care about. The Marvels was just fucking dull. Eternals, definitely one of my least favorite. I was so bored by that movie when I saw it. As far as DC movies, Justice League I didn't give a fuck about when I watched that finally. The Snyder Cut I also didn't really care about. I know people were like, oh, this is so much better. I didn't care. I just was honestly bored personally. It was way too fucking long and did nothing for me personally, but it also was not for me, so I get it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what other superhero movies I've seen. Obviously the ones from like the 2000s. I watched Ghost Rider again for the first time. Not for the first time, but I watched it with Alexis the other day. Rewatched it for the first time in a while. Remembered very little about it. It was okay. The Fantastic Four movies from that period were not great. The Daredevil movie I watched that for the first time a couple of months ago. The one from 2003, fucking atrocious. That movie was awful. So that would probably be up there. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other ones. Joker 2, if you want to include that one. There's probably some ones that are just bad enough that I don't really remember. But those are the main ones that come to mind. I'm trying to think of other DC movies. Suicide Squad sucked. The 2016 one, it was not great at all. I don't know if it was one of my least favorite, but it was not. I wouldn't rewatch it. Trying to think of what else came out from DC. Shazam 1 was good. Shazam 2 was okay. Black Adam I enjoyed for what it was. Even though it was a flop, I enjoyed it for what it was. I'm trying to think of other ones that came out. I don't really remember. But yeah, those would be my top 5, bottom 3 for least favorite, least favorite, I would say. Ewagoo91 from Twitter, their first question was, Zack Sabre Jr. became the new IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. What are your thoughts? That's cool. Yeah, I saw that the other day. Was not expecting that. I don't really follow the New Japan product at all beyond what I see on Twitter. So I don't know what the build was. I don't know who won the G1 Climax and who's getting the title shot. Did he win the Climax and he got the title shot now? I have no idea. But that's cool. Zack Sabre Jr. is great, and that product could use a lot of star power right now because they lost a lot of their stars to AEW. So any stars they can get or build up is good. And Zack Sabre Jr. is that guy. Naito at this point, I like Naito. He doesn't feel like a big star to me personally whenever I see him. Zack Sabre Jr. is a fresher face in that role, so I'm glad he won the belt. So yeah, they're taking a chance on the guy, and he is, especially with all the people they've lost, he is certainly World Heavyweight Champion, championship material, so good for him. Second question from @Ewagoo91. Your thoughts on Hiroshi Tanahashi announcing he'll retire on January 4th, 2026. I'm honestly surprised it took this long. He's been a commissioner, like an authority figure now for about a year and a half or something like that. Maybe even earlier this year. Any match I've seen him in, he looks like he's moving in slow motion. His knees are shot. So again, I'm surprised. Like he fucking won a title this year. He beat Matt Riddle, I think. I think he was the one to beat Matt Riddle, or Matt Riddle beat him. I don't remember. To win the, I think Riddle beat him. To win the TV title or whatever it was. He won the title from Zack Sabre Jr. I won that I watched that match at Wrestle Kingdom. I'm like, why? Like, what is the point of this? That's so weird. People were saying, oh, it would have been so cool to get Cena Tanahashi. At this point, the match probably wouldn't be good. But yeah, it would be crazy. Imagine if, as part of Cena's retirement tour, they sent him to fucking New Japan to face Tanahashi. That would be unbelievable. Not going to happen, but that would be awesome. Even though the match probably wouldn't be that good. But yeah, that's end of an era for Tanahashi's in-ring run coming to an end on January 4th, and he's going to have his own final big match on that show. What it'll be, I don't know, but having him have his final match on Wrestle Kingdom makes the most sense. Your third question overall, what did you make of Bryan Danielson's AEW World title run? I mean, it was quick. It was good while it lasted. I mean, it's better than it not happening. I would have been perfectly content with Swerve beating Bryan at All In, to be perfectly honest with you. I would not have been upset if Bryan lost, because I was kind of hoping Swerve would win. But, Bryan got his big moment. The match was amazing. His run was underwhelming because he was not even really on the show, I feel like. Like, they did the Jack Perry thing. That was quick. The match was very good. Not a match I'll go back and watch again, but it was very good. The Nigel match I enjoyed. The build sucked because Bryan wasn't even there to build it up. That sucked. And then the Jon Moxley stuff happened. They had to build that up quick. And they had a very good match at Wrestle Dream and he lost. So it was too fast. I would have dragged it out, but he wasn't even supposed to win the belt in the first place. Tony Khan kind of had to convince him to win the belt and then lose it in his home state, which I guess if you're going to retire anywhere from full-time competition, it might as well be there. But, yeah, I mean, I guess it was fine while it lasted. It could have been more, but it wasn't about a 6-month run having great matches, which is what I would have rather seen, but I guess it's better than nothing, I suppose. But you know what? I'm just happy we got that Nigel match. The Nigel match wasn't like an instant classic, but I always wanted to see that in real time all these years later, and we got it, so like I said, I can't complain too much. Final two questions. Bill Meister88 here, first question. Good morning from a cold Manchester, England, Graham. Tonight, I'm front row at WWE Live in Manchester. He's talking about last night. Thinking of events you've been to which have been your best seats and which non-PLE you've attended has been your favorite show to attend. Great questions. First of all, hope you enjoyed the show. That's awesome that you got to go to WWE Live that year. Did you actually send that in from the show? Like, were you sitting at the show? You sent that in at 1:51 a.m., which would have been around 8 o'clock your time. So, or no, wait. Are we ahead? I don't remember. I'm so fucking stupid. It was 1:51 my time here. So it would be, no, you're ahead. It would have been like 6 o'clock there. I don't even know. I don't know if you sent that in while you're there, while you weren't there. I mean, maybe tonight you meant like as in like coming up tonight on Wednesday. I don't know if they're in Manchester tonight. I'm spending way too much time on that point, but I hope you had a great time, or if you have not gone yet, hopefully you do have a good time. Best seats, I always wanted to sit front row. I always wanted a chair. I have a chair. It's not because I went to a show and got it. I have one of those pull-out chairs, a pay-per-view chair from Money in the Bank 2019. I went to that show. I did not have seats where I would have gotten a chair. WWE at the beginning of COVID 4 years ago, they had a massive garage sale on their website where they were selling these chairs. It was like $100, $120. But I never had a chair before, and I went to that show, so I'm like, honestly, it's a cool fucking chair. I want it, so I bought it. And I use it all the time. I love that chair. But I've never actually been to a show and sat in a chair and gotten a chair. But I want a chair. Because either if I get free tickets to a show, they're not in a chair. And if I buy the tickets to the show, I'm not buying fucking front row. So I've never gotten a chair seat. That being said, I did get front row. If we're counting shows that I was sitting there for, because I was right next to the stage for Mania last year, Mania 39, because we had to be shuffled out of there in time for the press conference right afterward. That was incredible. So seeing that whole main event with Cody and Roman, I wasn't ringside, but I was stage side. That was incredible. So that would have been the best view I've ever gotten. That was at one of the biggest Manias of all time. But then, for shows that I've sat at, I was front row for a couple SmackDowns, one in 2022, one last year for Tribute to the Troops. We were literally ringside. And then also for Battleground, NXT Battleground that same year. Those are the best seats I've ever had on the hard cam side. So you wouldn't have seen us unless they zoomed out or some shit. But yeah, definitely that show. Probably Battleground 2023. Because the SmackDown, the first time I got ringside, we were a couple rows back. But then SmackDown, when we went last year for Tribute to the Troops in Providence, we were literally at ringside, which was crazy. So probably one of those shows. That was the best seats I've ever had. I also got close behind the commentators when I went to one of my first Raws in 2013. That was also fun. And you could have seen you could see me on TV at one point. But still, I think the best shows, the best seats were still the ones that I had directly at ringside last year. As far as which non-PLE I have attended that was been my favorite to attend, easily, you know what? I think aside from NXT shows, Elimination Chamber 2023. I've mentioned this before, still one of my favorite trips with Mr. Marceau. We took an impromptu trip to Montreal last year. We had good seats. The show was great. The whole weekend was amazing. One of my favorite wrestling trips I've ever taken was definitely that one. I've been to, I'm sorry, you said non-PLE. I'm thinking non-Big Four. I'm so fucking stupid. Huh. I thought you meant non-Big Four. You're saying non-pay-per-view. Have I been to? That was my favorite to attend. I'm so stupid. Favorite non-pay-per-view show. I went to Raw 25. That was a fun time in January 2018. That was fun. Any live Raw, if we're not including NXT. I went to an NXT, you know what? Maybe this one. NXT Live in Lowell, Mass. It was the night that Samoa Joe won the NXT Championship. There was just a special aura in the air that night. It was just fucking, I don't know, it was fun. It was fun. And I've been to a couple draft shows, superstar shake-up shows as they call them back in the day. But I think my favorite non-PLE show was that NXT Live show. Not a takeover, not even a TV show. It was a house show. And I just wish it was recorded or something so I could watch it back. I just wish I could be in that night, that moment again and relive it. It was just so special. NXT was such a special entity at that point, and the main event alone with Joe winning the belt was just unbelievable. No one saw that coming. That was crazy. So I wish I was also in that moment again as well. So probably that one. I mean, there's been other ones, like I said, Raws and SmackDowns I've been to that were a lot of fun. But I feel like it might have been that NXT house show from April of 2016 in Lowell, Mass. Last question, also from Billy. He said, the debate will go on forever of who is more important for the business, Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold Steve Austin. Who do you think had the biggest impact on the business? Oh man, that's a loaded question. Biggest impact. I feel like, I don't know if wrestling is where it is. In order for Stone Cold to come up, Hogan had to happen first. Probably Hogan. Because, if they didn't have Hogan, then what would the expansion have even been built off of? Vince McMahon needed his top guy. And he got it in Hogan, who really transcended wrestling. And I know a lot more people who know Hulk Hogan, for better or for worse, than they do know Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I'm going to say, Stone Cold Steve Austin was the biggest draw probably of all time. But bigger impact on the business? Probably still Hogan. Honestly, Stone Cold led that Attitude Era, and that's their most profitable period ever. But I feel like in order for that to happen, Hogan had to happen first. You could say, oh, what about Bruno? Yeah, but the business impact that Hogan had when he was on top as WWE champion, and however long he was on top for, was massive. And also if you include the NWO too, he was also in very... he led WCW to one of its most profitable periods as well. Not only one boom period, but two. So I would probably go Hogan. Hogan over Stone Cold. Stone Cold wins almost every other argument as far as almost anything else goes. But as far as biggest impact, it would probably be Hulk Hogan. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of #AskGSM for October 16th, 2024. It's my brother's birthday today. Happy birthday to Austin. Thank you guys for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Episode 568 here today. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Like I said earlier, guys, let me know if you want me to do these videos live every Wednesday. I don't know if it's feasible yet. I don't know if it's something I want to do. I don't know if it's something we can do every week. But it would be cool. We'll at least try it out for a couple weeks. I don't know if we wait until 2026 or we do it sooner. I'm not sure. But let me know if that's something you're interested in, if you want to tune in during your lunch period or whatever, your lunch break on fucking Wednesdays, and we can chat for a while. Maybe I would make the shows shorter, and they're not always an hour like these recorded shows are, but, might be fun. So something to consider, some food for thought for you guys. I want to make some changes here to the channel as far as stuff that we do, don't do more of, do less of, whatever. That would be cool. So Let me know your input, and like I said earlier, check out the store, ProWrestlingTees.com/WrestleRant. Support the show, support what I do, support the channel, support the WrestleRant brand by buying a shirt today. I greatly appreciate it. Have a great week, folks. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.